This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Harts webinar series. And over the next few months, we've got some good plans set out for the rest of the year. Some of which is going to be online, and some of which are going to be physical, and more about that in a moment. But before we do that, we just have to read our usual disclaimer. So the following presentation is produced for general guidance only, and professional advice should always be sought before any transaction is undertaken. Individual circumstances can vary, and therefore no responsibility can be accepted by Harts Limited or any of their affiliates for any action taken or any decision made to refrain from action by attendees of this presentation. What we normally do is have a quick government support update before we carry on. But before we do that, it would be great if you could encourage some friends, family, or whatever to follow us on LinkedIn. And you just need to go to Harts Limited and just click on follow. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and go to Harts Limited, all our sessions are recorded up there, including this one. And this will be appearing later on today. And please follow us on Twitter, where our hashtag is Harts Accountant. So please feel free to get involved, follow us, and you'll keep up to date with absolutely everything that's going on. In relation to the government support update, no doubt you're going to hear more from Emma in a moment about the furlough scheme, which ends at the end of the month. A couple of other things. VAT on hospitality rises to 12.5% from the 1st of October. That runs through till the 30th of April next year, and then it's back up to 20%. And we have the recovery loan scheme in place. Those are loans available to businesses of any size, and so that help them to recover after the pandemic. If you need any further information on that, please get in touch. And the hot topic of the moment is the national insurance rise from April 2022. Now, this is going to affect everybody because it's going to be employees and employers are going to have the 1.25% added onto their tax bills. And also, if you're taking dividends from a limited company, then you're going to face another tax rise of 1.25%. So it affects everybody at the moment. We will issue further details when we have them because there are still some uncertainties how it's actually going to operate, but it doesn't come in until April 2022. So just make sure you keep up to date with what we're sending out in our emails, and you can see what's actually happening. Right, I'm delighted to welcome back Emma Fay to our webinar series. Now, for those of you who were there right at the very beginning, Emma actually did our very first webinar when furlough was something we'd never heard of before, and she gave us a complete understanding and explanation of how it all works. Now that it's coming to an end, effectively we're going full circle, and so I'm delighted to hand over to Emma, and so that she can show her presentation. Now I'm just going to make you the presenter.
Thank you.
And so you are now the presenter. So over to you, Emma, and no doubt we shall be taking questions. If you've got any questions you want to ask, we've got the chat box. Just feel free to stick your questions into the chat box and we'll be able to answer them as well. And if you want to have a chat with us, we'll stay online just after the end of the webinar if you want to ask any questions, but might not want to do so in front of everybody. So I'm going to hand over now to Emma, and over to you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to click on the screen share button, but it's not fully working just yet. It's saying I don't have the permission.
You are the presenter.
Let's have a look. Sorry, I think it's going to make me just restart GoToMeeting. Is that okay? I'll be back in.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll have a chat while you're going to do that, and I'll make myself back the presenter as well. And I'll just bear with me 1 second.
Hopefully we'll be all right.
Yeah, fine. We'll see you in a minute. What I'll do is I'll just go on to what we are actually going to be doing on our next webinars and our next events. So on the 23rd of September, we'll be talking about wills and powers of attorney. Now, this will be our first in-person session, which will be starting at 8:30 a.m. at our offices. We'll have a small breakfast to start with, and then if you want to book on that, feel free to join us. We are limited with numbers because of COVID, so it will be screened as well. So we'll be doing live screening of that event as well. So if you can't make it, you can just log on in the normal way as we have at the moment. Then on the 7th of October, we have our question time. Now, this is an in-person session. It's going to run from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And we have a fantastic panel lined up for you. We have Paul Griffiths, who's the chairman of the Monastery in St Francis and Gorton Trust, who's a Deputy Lieutenant of Greater Manchester and is next director of the ASDA and the Co-op. Now, those of you who are in the know will know that the monastery in Gorton is actually one of the World Heritage Sites, and he's involved in maintaining that. And it's a fantastic building to go and have a look at. He's going to be joining us as well. We have Tommy Taylor, who is a professional rugby player for Sale Sharks, who's just moved from Wasps and England. We have Kay Stevenson from Macclesfield Means Business, which promotes a lot of businesses in Macclesfield. And Nick Bianchi, and I'm sure most of you have all heard of the Origi Bianchi furniture store, and he's also a club ambassador of Macclesfield Football Club. So he's going to be joining us as well on our question time. If you've got any questions that you want, please make sure you get your questions to us by the 6th of October so we can have them ready for our panel. And again, please feel free to join us. We'll be sending out invites for this fairly shortly. On the 21st of October, we're going to have an online only session on cyber security. And on the 4th of November, we're going to have pensions. Are they worth it? We have an independent financial advisor, and they're going to be joining us for the webinar explaining all about pensions and the tax benefits and so on. So hopefully, Emma, you're back involved now. I will make you again the presenter.
Fingers crossed.
So you're now presenter, and hopefully you should be able to take it from here.
Oh, we still got it. Just saying I haven't got permission.
Oh dear. Do you want to? Can you email me your presentation, and I will sort it that way?
It's going to be my next suggestion. Yes.
Okay, fine. Again, whilst we're doing that, we also have a session in December. We have one session in December, which is going to be on the budget. Potentially, we might well be changing around some of these dates because we've just been announced that the budget is taking place towards the end of October. So it may well be that some of these dates may well change. We have a strategic planning session built in for those that want to understand more what that's all about. And then in the January, the 1st January back, we will be looking at inheritance tax and what it means to you and how you can avoid it. There's a lot more people now being dragged into the net of inheritance tax. So it may well be that you need to take some advice on this. So that's going to be a summary of all the stuff that we've been doing at the moment. So Emma, have you sent that through to me?
Yeah, any minute now you should be getting that.
You just bear with me 1 second. It's still not come through, so apologies for the delay. But no doubt it'll be, well, here we go, it'll be well worth waiting for. So let me just open this up. 1 second. Okay, hopefully you can all see that.
Nothing's come up yet on mine anyway.
Bear with me 1 second.
Technology's not playing today, is it?
No, just bear with me. I'm going to screen share that. Okay.
Fabulous. And I'll apologise to you in advance, Stephen, for all the clicking you're going to have to do.
Don't worry about it. Over to you.
Fabulous, thank you. And yeah, thank you everyone for hopping on, and sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm going to have to keep my hands to myself now because I'm going to be feeling the urge to move my slide along. Yeah, if you go on to the next slide, Stephen, thank you. I thought what I'd start is just a bit of a recap on where we've been. As Stephen said, it was March last year when furlough became a thing. It was something that we'd never heard about in the UK anyway, and we were all having to pretty much scramble around and learn as things were coming out, which was quite a lot. So if you just click through, Stephen, a few things should pop up. So yeah, we've got the introduction of the furlough scheme from March 2020, lots and lots of changes, and we're now on the wind down, which I'm sure many people are happy about. Current end date, although we've had many end dates, I'm pretty sure, along with everyone else, that this is the final one, and hopefully we'll never talk about it again. The 30th of September, so we've got what, about 3 weeks-ish left. Current situation, government contributing 60% to furloughed staff's wages, and the employer pays the 20% plus the employer's national insurance and pension. And obviously since March 2020, it's no surprise we've got widespread remote working going on in those industries that can actually do it. Those that can't have had to utilise the furlough scheme a little bit more. So just one more click on this slide. Hybrid working is now one of these new phrases that everyone's quite enjoying, but it is likely to be the norm going forward in many businesses, those that it's practical to do so anyway. And it is one of those where we're kind of thinking that staff in certain industries are going to be seeing this as a perk when they're applying for jobs, when they're looking to stay or leave an employer. Having that flexibility will probably be quite expected if it's practical. Yeah, next slide, please. I feel like I'm on one of these or something. There's quite a few. I'm trying to count how many clicks.
Don't worry, I can see it on my screen, so don't worry. Whoop.
Thank you. So what I'm talking about today then, returning to the workplace. So whether that is that you've got staff on furlough or whether you've got staff remote working, it's almost the same thing. We're implementing a change by getting people back into the workplace. As with any change, there's going to need to be a transition. A lot of staff will have adjusted to what they've been doing over the last 18 months, if that's hybrid, if that's remote, if that's furlough. So rather than just springing something on them and expecting them to show up to the workplace as though nothing's happened, is going to be quite unrealistic in terms of how well that's going to go. So be mindful about the transition period that you need. I know a few of my clients started around June, almost doing their own little roadmap to get their staff back into the workplace, so that it was fully planned in maybe a couple of months in advance, to give everyone that time to adjust and to try things out as well. Holiday entitlements are causing a bit of a problem still, as they did last year. Whilst there's been a bit more activity with holidays, especially over the last month, it's still a case that many of our clients in particular have got staff who are racking up holiday entitlements. They're not taking them as they would in a normal holiday year, and particularly if the holiday year is going to end in December. You know, we're already in September, we've not got that long left. So what you don't want is it's all systems go in your business, and then you find staff are throwing in their holiday requests last minute and you're suddenly short-staffed again. So what I would suggest is talk to staff, particularly those who have a load of holiday left, encourage them to take it. You do have a duty to do that, to make sure they are taking their proper rest and getting paid for it, but also think about whether you need them to apportion their remaining entitlement. Do you need them to take a set amount per month now to the end of the year to make sure that's staggered appropriately? And think about as well what's changed in your business. Most businesses have changed in some way, whether it's even just increased use of video conferencing or whatever. There will be some changes, so don't assume that everyone's going to be up to speed and okay with the changes that have happened, and maybe think about, is there any training needs for those, particularly those that are returning to work after a period of not being in or a period of being off working from their own homes. Even things like system changes. I know a lot of clients have put things that were previously paper-based onto new systems, and they've taken this opportunity to get a lot more techie. So you might be needing to do some little workshops with people just to get everyone up to speed and just avoid those problems when you do need the staff to be all hands on deck. And what if staff refuse to return to work? And this is one of those difficult conversations that I'm having to have with a lot of clients at the moment, because there are some staff who are not comfortable with returning to the workplace. Could be for many reasons. We've had some silly reasons which don't really count, such as who's going to look after my dog. That doesn't really count as a valid reason. However, there are, on the flip side, genuine anxieties still around what's COVID secure, what's not. Do I want to be in an office full of people? Do I want to be on the train every day mingling with the general public? So what I would say is dismissal is way down the line if someone refuses to return to work. We first need to go through a reasonable process of investigating what exactly is the reason. If it is anxieties around the pandemic, then it could be that we're talking about what extra PPE can you give them? What can you do to adjust to make them feel more comfortable? Could you change their working hours slightly so they're not travelling in rush hour? Could you maybe just phase it, give them a half day to start with and see how they get on? So just have those reasonable conversations and don't assume that people are being difficult if they do refuse, because most times they're not, and it is genuine concerns, but it will all depend on what that reason is. I mean, ultimately, if someone point blank refuses, they can't work from home and they are being unreasonable because the workplace is safe, then we might end up in a situation of disciplinary procedures, but do take specific advice before you embark upon that route, because it can be risky. Flexible working requests are one of those things that seem to have been forgotten in terms of the fact that there's a statutory procedure for handling a flexible working request. When I talk about flexible working, it can be anything from a staff member requesting to change their hours of work. It could be changing their days of work. It could be changing their place of work. And that's quite a key one in the time that we're in now. So a lot of staff, when they're being told to return to the workplace, they're saying, well, no, I want to work from home permanently. And some of our clients have forgotten that actually there is then a statutory process that needs to be followed to handle that request. We shouldn't be just dismissing that out of hand. ACAS sets out a procedure for handling a flexible working request. That means having at least a meeting to talk about it. And that also means giving full consideration and only refusing a request if you've got one of a limited number of business reasons to do so. So it can't just be simply a case that, no, we don't want you to, we want you back in the office. We need to go through that process and have a proper conversation. We do have a downloadable free guide on flexible working requests, which sets out how you should handle those if you get one. And there's a link at the end of this presentation to the website if that would be helpful. It's just slightly worrying me that some people have forgotten, because any staff member with over 26 weeks service can legally request flexible working, and they do have the statutory right to have that considered properly. So COVID secure measures. So obviously the kind of general restrictions were on the whole lifted on the 19th of July, and since then is when we've seen a bigger return into workplaces. But what we have seen as well is some companies being a little bit too lax with their other measures to reduce transmission of COVID-19 in the workplace. And the point is there is not much of a relaxing of the guidance from the government in terms of what workplaces have to do. So whilst we've got relaxed restrictions in public, not so much in the workplaces. I've put the link there, so I don't know if Stephen maybe wants to send these slides out after, I don't mind, but that link there will take you to the government site, which has it's quite meaty guidance actually still about what is expected from employers in terms of making workplaces COVID safe. And there's a big emphasis on sanitisation, there's a big emphasis on social distancing and also on ventilation of the workplace as well, in order to reduce transmission. So you should already have risk assessments anyway. They should have been happening since this all started. Make sure you're updating your risk assessments with any changes, any new information such as this latest guidance, and also looking at what measures you are keeping in place or putting in place in your workplace, whether that is PPE, whether that's weekly testing, whatever it is. Any policies like that really should be discussed with the staff as well, to make sure that they understand why you're doing it, they understand the importance of doing it, but they also have the opportunity to raise any objections informally rather than getting down the grievance route, which we all would like to avoid. Next slide, please. So, no jab, no job. Again, another really difficult conversation, and probably the key thing I wanted to talk about today, really. It's a really emotive issue, the whole vaccine thing, and everybody's got their own views on it. And that's the conversation I've been having with clients over the last few months, is remembering that the jab is a personal choice, regardless of our own views on it. So implementing a policy where if you're not vaccinated, you're going to be sacked is only going to be allowed in really, really limited circumstances. And at the moment, I'm really talking about care homes, CQC registered care homes. From the 11th of November, it is going to be the law that someone entering a care home has to be vaccinated or can prove they're exempt. So, of course, if there's staff working in that home and they don't get vaccinated by the 11th of November, there's going to be lawful grounds to dismiss them. There's still going to need to be a fair process, which will be the same for any kind of dismissal. We can't just do it on the spot with no conversation. And even then, I would suggest taking specific advice, because what we're also finding is there's the suppliers to care homes. So there's the electricians, the plumbers, the maintenance workers, whoever it is who's going in. Technically, they also need to be vaccinated. So it does have a knock-on effect on those employers. So do be very mindful that just because maybe business owner has a strong view that everybody should be vaccinated, and it's going to be one of the key measures that's going to protect the rest of our workforce and our clients, it's still not necessarily going to be something we can force a staff member to do and threaten them with their job if they don't. So really the focus for employers, I mean, employers do have a really big role to play in encouraging take-up of the vaccine, educating staff. There's a lot of misinformation, as we all know, that floats around and spreads on social media, and in particular demographics of people, it seems to be. So making sure that if a staff member is, what one of my clients said, a bit of a waverer and they're not sure because they're hearing different types of information, make sure you know where to send them to get that information, whether that is the NHS, whether that's the government, whether that's the CDC, where they're going to get scientific information about the vaccine and the side effects and all those bits and pieces. There's also things that employers can do to encourage staff to take the vaccine, in terms of maybe giving paid time off on the day that they're getting their vaccine, maybe just reassuring them that if they get some bad side effects and they need a couple of days off to recover, they'll get paid for that time. Whatever it is, just to kind of encourage, and maybe even just have a chat with them and see actually what are their concerns about getting the vaccine. Even asking staff about their vaccine status is an interesting topic, and when I was doing a bit of digging into a few weeks back. It is classed as sensitive personal data because it's medical information about a staff member. So in terms of data protection legislation, that's how it should be treated. So the key question, which is, it's interesting because most people are quite happy to talk about whether they're vaccinated or not, or if they don't want to, why they don't want to. But from an employer point of view, we really need to think about, actually, do we have the right to ask that question at all? And if so, why? What's the legal basis? What impact does it have on your business that you need to know that information? Now, obviously, going back to the care home example, there's a clear, valid reason. Of course, they need to know, otherwise they can't enforce the law that will come into place on the 11th of November. But for other workplaces, it's going to be difficult to actually set out why you need to know that information. So I can't tell you whether you do or do not. It's got to be a business decision. You need to be carrying out what's called a data protection impact assessment. You need to find out actually objectively as well, not just because you think, well, I'd like to know, because it'd be good if we could say that 90% of the workforce are vaccinated. That could be fine, in which case that should be anonymous data. You don't necessarily need to know who it is. But thinking about the why do you need to know? And when I've asked clients that question, it's been quite a difficult one to answer. Sometimes the answer is, well, for health and safety reasons, because I need to know who's vaccinated and who isn't. But again, it's a grey area, because having the vaccine doesn't stop transmission. It reduces it, but it doesn't stop it. So is it really a health and safety consideration? If you do your data protection impact assessment and you decide as a business that yes, we do need to know this information, what you're going to do with it? Are you going to actually store that somewhere? Are you going to store that on the staff's file or in another record somewhere? Or are you just going to look at their COVID pass thing on their phone and that's the end of that? You're not going to record it anywhere. Because if you're not recording it, there is an argument to say that it's not processing in accordance with data protection legislation, therefore there might be no bother. So that's another consideration. What are you going to do? Are you going to actually record that information? And if you are going to record it, think about where, remembering that it is sensitive personal data. It can't be just left floating around in a personnel file somewhere in someone's office. It needs to be stored securely and it needs to be limited in terms of who will access that information and when. And again, that should be strictly limited to those who absolutely need to know it, which comes back to your data protection impact assessment. Why are you getting it in the first place? Also, how long will you keep that record for? Hopefully you know already, but there's different timeframes for different types of employee records in terms of how long you should be storing those after termination of employment. So again, this will be something that you need to fit in with that policy. And also thinking about your employee privacy notice, you should already have these in place since GDPR became a thing in 2018. There is an obligation to provide staff with a privacy notice which tells them what data you collect, why and how you process it. So obviously if you're then going to start collecting vaccination data, then you'll need to update your privacy notice accordingly. And also again, I always bang on about communicating with the staff, but it is a really key thing. If you're going on a kind of policy of actually, yes, we are going to ask everyone for their vaccine status, again, communicate that with the staff. Don't just catch them off the hop and while they're trying to make a brew and ask them for proof of vaccine status. It might not go down too well. I'm remembering as well about asking health-related questions before making an offer of employment. It's not allowed under the Equality Act. So a vaccine status will be classed as a health-related question. So don't ask anyone about it when they apply for a job, is what I'm saying. If you offer a job and you actually only want to recruit people who have had the vaccine, you can ask it post-job offer, once you've already made the offer of employment. If you want to make it conditional, that's entirely up to you. But again, take some advice if you're thinking about putting such a policy in place. There are some potential considerations around discrimination. So thinking about the reasons that someone might refuse a vaccine. Some of those people who have strong anti-vax beliefs, and that's anti-vax beliefs, not just people who think COVID is fake, that's not going to probably be protected under the Equality Act, but strong beliefs that might be classed as a philosophical belief under the Equality Act will be protected. So we shouldn't really then be discriminating. And also similarly, if we have individuals who are refusing the vaccine on religious grounds and things like that, they may have some protection under the Equality Act. So they're all things to be mindful of. And that's that on no job, no job. Next slide, please. So we've done all that. We've clarified policies and what we're going to do with vaccine information. We've decided we're not going to sack people if they don't get the vaccine because it's not a good approach. So we've got first day back, and this has happened so much where the staff members then called in sick on the first day back, and it's quite frustrating. And some of my poor clients have had to deal with this when they're raring to go, and it's like, yes, you know, first day back, and then suddenly someone calls in. And it's always that thing, isn't it? Don't make assumptions that it's not genuine. It could just be a really bad coincidence. And in some cases it will be. Or it could be that actually someone has got up on that day, they're due back in the workplace for the first time in however long, and they've got genuine anxieties around doing it that they didn't maybe realise they had beforehand. So make sure you're not making assumptions. Do what you would normally do if they ring in sick. Make sure you are getting to the root of the reason. If they say they've got a cold, is it that or is it something else? And make sure that they feel able to tell you if it is, because otherwise you're not going to be able to resolve it. Because hopefully if there are any concerns around, again, going back to the whole, is it safe to return? You can then backtrack. Actually, did you do enough in reassuring them that it is a safe place to be in the workplace? Did you ask them beforehand Are they comfortable travelling into work? You know, just backtrack a bit and make sure that they are happy. Of course, it might be genuinely that they've got a cold. They might have had a positive COVID test. Who knows? But yeah, don't make assumptions that that they're taking the mick. What can be quite a good idea is to set a bit of a review period, especially if someone has been off work, whether it is off properly on furlough or away from the workplace, remote working. It can be a good idea to do a bit of a check-in period. So after how long are you going to just check in with people on a one-to-one basis? Maybe after a week in would be a decent amount of time to just check how they are. Are they finding that the workplace actually has the measures that you've said they've got? Because sometimes that can happen. It's, you know, we've got clients who have put great risk assessments in place. They put really strong measures in place in terms of social distancing, but it's the staff who maybe aren't following it as well as they should. So getting that feedback from the staff just to make sure that if anything needs tightening up a bit, you can do. You're much less likely to get those people who then decide, actually, this isn't for me, I'm not comfortable working here. And that's what we don't really want to get to. And I put here, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think it was a few months ago, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be so nice for all these workplaces to get back together. They're going to love it, you know, back part of the team. And actually what's happened in a few cases is staff have actually got quite used to being in their own home, away from everyone and their annoying work habits, which they'd obviously got used to pre-March 2020, whereas suddenly bringing everyone back together is bringing up some clashes of personalities and some frustrations. And remember as well, we've got quite a lot of new people in the workplace who have never actually been in the physical workplace. So they may have never interacted with people face to face. Therefore, bringing them in suddenly has, yeah, it's led to some interesting situations so far. So think about how you're going to manage that. So if there are any kind of tensions, clashes, nip it in the bud. Don't let those things fester. I mean, all right, we might need a bit of a bedding in period, so to speak, as in let's just let them get back used to it. This is how it is. This is how it's going to be. But equally, if you can see that two or more people are really not getting on or are bickering, nip it in the bud, speak to them, make sure you're resolving it. We now do mediation as a service, and we can just see that becoming much more popular because of these just these differences that are appearing in the workplace now, that maybe before March 2020 people would have just put up with, but that 18 months of peace and quiet has sometimes shown people how annoying their colleagues are. So just something to be mindful of. And another point on isolation. So the rules at the minute, I think since, was it the 16th of August? I forget all these dates. Is that if someone is double vaccinated or they're under the age of 18, if they have just come in contact with someone who tests positive, they shouldn't have to isolate. However, it's one of those where I think companies are going to need to be a bit, think about what's right for your business. So if you have a staff member who's someone they live with tests positive, bearing in mind we know that vaccinated people can transmit the virus, think about the impact that could have on the rest of your workforce. So hopefully you're doing all your social distancing, you're doing your sanitisation and all this kind of stuff. But just think about, actually, could they just work from home while they get their tested, get tested, get their family member tested and whatever, especially when it's children as well who then have to stay off school. So there is still the coronavirus SSP scheme in place. There is normal rules on time off for dependent emergencies. If someone needs to look after a child, it's unpaid leave normally. So it's up to you whether you have any different policies for that. But I think sometimes, I think at the minute we've all got a little bit fed up of the whole pinging and being told to isolate and things like that. So the default can sometimes be, no, you don't need to isolate, come back in. But then think about what if they are then spreading it around your workplace. It's not going to be great if you've then got a load of staff who are unwell, both from their well-being point of view and from your business point of view. So just maybe think about using your discretion depending on what industry your business is and whether people can work from home, and that kind of thing. And that's it on that slide. Thank you. And finally, I thought it would be useful to do a bit of a recap on redundancy. So it is a negative topic. I don't really like talking about it, but it is important, especially as we are thinking of almost a bit of a third wave here of redundancies. We've had a couple already throughout the pandemic, but as the furlough scheme is coming to an end, we kind of think that some businesses have been hanging on in terms of not wanting to make redundancies because of how the furlough scheme now works, in terms of it doesn't fund notice periods. We think there's maybe been some delaying while businesses try and get their cash flow in order. But anyway, if redundancy does come up, or the potential for redundancy does come up, there's no leeway because of the pandemic. There's no difference to the normal rules, and it's therefore status quo as it was, as it's been for a long time. Normal consultation rules apply. So unless you're making 20 or more people redundant, which is unlikely for most clients because we work with small businesses, there aren't any set time periods or set processes in terms of consultation. There's no law that says you've got to have so many meetings or you've got to do consultation over 30 days. There's nothing like that unless you're making 20 or more, or proposing to make 20 or more redundancies. So that's kind of helpful in one way because we can be a bit more flexible being small businesses. However, it also doesn't give us the clear guidance that we need in terms of what employment tribunals will expect. So consultation, it should be meaningful. That's the key thing. So I'll come on to that in a minute when I just go through the process, but we shouldn't be consulting with people when we've already made a decision on redundancy, because then that's not consulting, that's informing. We should be at the point where we think that redundancies are the only option. That's when we go on to the process that I've set out there. So these are the key things that we would expect to see in any redundancy, whether there's only one employee in the business or whether there's 30. So a business case, and that just means a documented business case. So not something that you just kind of have thought of, but something that you've put some kind of consideration into and you put it in writing. So we would want to see actually what is the reason, what's the reduction in work, and why has the work reduced to the extent that redundancies are being proposed? Which roles are potentially affected by the proposal? And I keep saying the word proposal because that's what it is at this point. We're not deciding on redundancies at this point. We're looking at financial data. So actually, what will the proposed redundancies achieve in terms of helping the business move forward? What alternatives have already been either applied or considered in terms of reducing costs? And also, who occupies the roles that are potentially at risk, and how will it affect those relative departments? And then once you've got your business case, that's your basis then for consulting with the staff, because you're proposing to the staff, look, this is what we think needs to happen, but we want to talk to you about it before we do anything. And that's what consultation is. It's two-way. It means that the staff member has a genuine opportunity to change the outcome. So unfortunately, a bit too often, we do get calls saying, right, I want to make John Smith redundant. And it's like, oh, well, we're not making John Smith redundant because we're making a role redundant. So that's always the key consideration. It's not an opportunity to get rid of people who are a bit annoying or who are a bit of a problem employee. It's all about roles and reduction in works. Consideration of alternatives. Again, you should have already done this in your business case, but then during consultation, you should be giving staff the opportunity to suggest alternatives as well. So they'll already know what you've considered because you will have told them, but you're also saying to them, look, what do you think we could do that would avoid redundancies? And you need to consider those as well. So again, not just dismissing things because you don't like the sound of the idea or you don't think it'll work. Actually thinking about it objectively. Could it work? Could we trial it? You know, whatever it might be. And sometimes staff suggest things like wage cuts or job shares, and sometimes people will say, well, actually I was looking to leave anyway, so we could volunteer for redundancy. Those kind of alternatives that could actually avoid compulsory redundancies. And in any case, you need to be fairly selecting. So obviously sometimes we do get redundancy situations where there's only one person in the role that's affected. That's much more straightforward. You're not selecting anyone then because it's that role and there's only one person in it. Whereas if you've got more than one person in a kind of similar or interchangeable role, we need to be selecting fairly. So it's not as simple as last in, first out. It should be more of an objective process. So you're setting criteria such as you could use skills, qualifications, experience, timekeeping, reliability, those kind of things. You're effectively creating a point scoring system, which will then help you fairly select someone for redundancy. And I should have really put this bullet point up at the top, because the key thing is you need to be mindful of what it's going to cost you. It's not cheap necessarily to make someone redundant. You don't want to go through all the consultation, get to selection and then go, oh, yeah, I didn't realise it was going to cost me that much, because that's a bit awkward then. You might have to backpedal and you've already gone through all this process. So make sure you know right at the start, what is it going to cost you? You've got statutory redundancy pay if someone's got more than 2 years service. You've got notice pay regardless of length of service, and you've probably also got accrued untaken holidays as well. So just be aware, particularly where you've got longer serving staff who have they've been with you a long time, they may be older, they will be entitled to more redundancy pay because of the way it's calculated, and more notice as well. This isn't so much as relevant now, seeing as we've only got 3 weeks or so left, but there has been a query a few times from clients about whether they can ask staff to attend consultation meetings while they're on furlough. And they can, because by doing so, the staff member isn't generating any money for the business, they're not providing a service to the business, they're just having a conversation about work. So that is allowed if you have still got people on furlough and you need to start this process now. And as I said at the start, notice periods now, I think since around November time, can't be funded by the furlough scheme, which again is not as relevant seeing as where we are in the scheme timeline. But last year it was allowed, so some companies were able to benefit from the furlough scheme, helping them along in paying, especially those long notice periods where otherwise the company would have had to fund themselves. But that's no longer the case, unfortunately. And that's it. I feel out of breath. I rattle through because I'm always conscious of not wanting to run over. But yeah, just wanted to say we've got a free section on our website, which is where you'll find the flexible working guide that I mentioned. You just pop your email address in and it'll download for you. I think it's only about 3 pages. And we work really closely with Harts, so I'm very grateful for being invited onto this webinar, and therefore if anyone does have any kind of live HR issue that's a bit more specific and maybe don't want to ask it now, more than happy to do a free 30-minute consultation, hopefully answer any live issues that you've got going on and give some advice.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Emma. That was absolutely fabulous. I think it got to the nub of the issue as what you can and can't do, and a lot of questions are being asked at the moment as no jab, no job especially, and that seems to be the hot topic in the press as well. And again, it's great to have you on, regular contributor to our webinar series, and as I say, you started at the beginning and we're going to be here at the end of furlough, but no doubt there'll be plenty of opportunities for going forward as well. So thank you very much indeed. Now, what I would like to do is just do a quick reminder to everybody as to what our future plans are, and so the next webinars and events that we have. As you can see, 23rd, wills and powers of attorney, and that's going to be in person at our office here in Macclesfield. And then on the 7th of October, I think this is going to be a fabulous opportunity for you to network, meet a load of new people, get out and about whilst you now can. I know Emma is heavily involved in the Pointer networking group, and that seems to be going very well. And we're hosting our own question time event, and as you can see, we've got a great panel there of Paul Griffiths, Tommy Taylor, Kay Stevenson and Nick Bianchi of Origi Bianchi's. And then we have our cyber security, which will be an online one as well, and pensions with Ian Marr of Craven Slater, who's going to be presenting on that one as well. So thank you very much indeed. I don't think there's any questions which have come into the chat box. Just a very big thank you from Catherine Edwards, which is fantastic, and from Andy. very useful information. So this session has been recorded and will appear on our YouTube channel. And now, as I say, if you're on our YouTube channel, please feel free to go there. There's some great videos coming up on there. The latest one is on electric vehicles. Feel free to have a watch of that. It's only a few minutes long. And so you'll be able to get some more information on that. Again, thanks for everybody for joining us this morning. Have a great day, and I hope the thunderstorms don't get you later on. And we'll see you on the next webinar.